Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunwerks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
All right, we're back on with another episode of Long Range Pursuit Podcast. And Mitch and I have been talking. We're kind of right in the thick of hunting season right now. I think a lot of us have been out of the office and in the office. Mm-hmm. I'm just back from hunt yesterday. We wanted to talk about tripods. And guys have been following along. We've got a line of Revic branded tripods. Those are coming from crew here at Gunwerks. Work really well to support our line of optics and kind of fit in line there with the binos and spotting scopes and everything else there. I think hopefully just about every long range hunter, every Western hunter, at least if you're not sitting in a tree stand or in the thick brush back east or whatever else, you're probably going to have a tripod along for optics.
Yep.
And other applications shooting off of and whatever, we'll dive into that. But wanted to kind of just dive into the thick and thin and, a lot of different options, a couple different styles of tripods out there, maybe some tips and tricks on some things that we've learned to get the most out of a tripod.
Yeah.
I think my first question, Mitch, I would just about bet you spend more time behind a tripod than any person in this building.
That's probably valid.
It's probably pretty.
It's probably
true.
accurate.
Pretty true.
Yeah. Me and you, I would say it's probably me and you.
There are a few guys, but we. Yeah. Two of us are pretty passionate about like mule deer hunting.
Yep.
You spend a lot of time behind the glass.
Too many hours.
Yeah. Sometimes successfully and sometimes not. I think both of us are in the unsuccessful category so far this year. But I guess my question first off, just right off the bat, is: are you a hunter or backpacker tripod guy?
That's tough. I'm like I both. I mean, it's both. I am both for sure. It depends. Like if I can be by the truck, 100%, I'm gonna take a big beefy guy. If it's a mile hike, I'll take the big guy for sure. But the backpacker is probably the majority of it.
Yeah.
Just light, small. Hey, let's get up to this point and glass in a few hours type of deal.
I think my answer in my head was yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was going to say. Right? It just depends on the answer. So maybe the guys who are not familiar.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the two primary versions of tripods that we sell, and there's a lot of great tripods out there. So my intent is not necessarily to just make this a hard sell on Revic tripods. I think what we have to offer is pretty awesome. I mean, our team looked at what we liked and what worked, and that's why we built what we built.
Exactly.
So those two, we kind of named them, I think, aptly, is you've got the hunter tripod, which is like kind of the quintessential hunter's tripod, like do all, kind of middle of the road. It's not on the far end extreme of one thing or the other, but maybe kind of a jack of all trades type tripod. And then the backpacker is kind of that version in a smaller package where you can actually feel good about it carrying it 10 miles a day, in some big country where, weight matters basically. And you're willing to maybe give up a few, bells and whistles and a little bit of stability or whatever else comes with a bigger package, in that nice little lightweight, tripod.
Agree.
So, I would agree. I think I almost kind of look at it like, to me, the hunter is my scouting tripod. And the backpacker is my hunting tripod. And I think that's really overgeneralizing. But the more I think about it, I think I tend to see myself using the hunter more year round. But when it comes down to like go time, I need to be able to move fast. And obviously you're hunting, you have to find an animal to kill it, but you're a little bit more in get it killed mode than you are find it mode, right? And observe it mode,
totally,
and whatever else. And so I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of weight. I'm a weight weenie. Like I just am. Part of it's because I'm a wimp, and part of it's because the places I hunt, is kind of mandatory.
Yep.
And so I need to save that pound and a half or whatever it is to be able to carry more food or, camping gear or rifle, right? When you're scouting, you're not carrying a rifle, and now you are. And so you have to make some trade-offs there.
Yep.
But
Totally agree.
But you're 100% right. Is it a day hunt situation where you're maybe a mile or two from the truck, walk, hike up to a point and sit there all day in glass?
Yep.
Or is it like pack in 8 miles and sleep in the dirt for 5 days?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different scenario, right?
Yeah.
And having that versatility in those two kind of primary units, it's pretty nice to be able to you're packing for a trip and like, okay, you know what? I'm taking the light guy because I don't want the weight, or you know what? I can justify a little bit of weight on this trip.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm with you for sure. We've had a couple different versions of the backpacker over the years, so I think some people are going to still see that older style.
Changed a few things on it.
Changed a couple things, some good updates. Like you said, our whole team's on board. It's not like hey, here's this one guy that's making the one decision.
Yeah,
in the end, it is. We all know that, but for the most part,
there's some consensus.
Maybe exactly where it's like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we make these changes. And so, for us guys that hunt all the time, and we feel like we know what we're talking about a little bit, with the amount of time we spend. These little features, I think, were some really nice adds that we did. So like you were saying, the backpacker and the hunter, big differences in one is weight, right?
Yeah.
You're about 4 pounds on a hunter with a head on it. And I'm sure we'll talk about heads, that we've got, a couple different versions and, that we have for each tripod, or, that you can mismatch or whatever you'd like. But the backpacker is going to be about 2 pounds, just over 2 pounds, but we have a center column. At first I was like skeptical on the leveling column that it has in there. Yeah. So it's for guys that don't know what our backpacker looks like, you've got a center column that you're kind of used to where, you've got your center post that goes up and down another.
And the original backpacker was no center.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think, give me your perspective. I think probably where we ended up, there's a lot of debate actually in the office, center column or no center column.
Yep.
And, I think the advantage of a no center column tripod is that you can get it low to shoot off of.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost shoot off of it like a bipod.
Yep, totally.
But, generally speaking, you're doing a little bit less shooting off of the backpacker than you would be doing off of the hunter. The backpacker is certainly capable of taking a shot off occasionally, but it's not going to be nearly as ideal shooting off of it. I would call it a like when it's necessary to shoot off of, you could make it work, but it's not. I wouldn't go into the field planning to shoot.
Exactly.
Tripod, right?
You make it work.
But so I think that's why we changed that is, okay, we can justify putting a center column on that because we're not really shooting off of that backpacker all that often. And so the advantages of the center column and the versatility that it adds justified, putting that feature into that product where we left the hunter no center column because you're going to be doing a little bit more shooting where it's capable of doing more shooting off the hunter tripod.
Yeah, a lot more rigid, things like that. So,
and I think, like I said, I think we're speaking in terms of models here, but I think, urge guys listening to think of this more a little bit about in general terms as, okay, whether it's a Revic tripod or something else, I would think there's kind of generally classify maybe 3 broad types of tripods out there. You've got like your big, heavy duty, sturdy, tall kind of photography or dedicated shooting tripods, right? Like a lot of guys in PRS and some of the competitive shooting stuff, they've got these big rigs. You see like the Secret Service sniper guys on all the news carrying these big, huge tripods, right? It's like that's kind of thing that's very, very dedicated purpose for front country, support of big guns and keep it sturdy, right? So I think that would be maybe one category. I think you've got that kind of middle of the road, jack of all trades tripod where our hunter tripod I think would fit in there.
100%.
It's not massive. It's relatively easy to carry in the field, but it's not ultralight. And then you've got the backpacker ultralight minimalist type tripod. And I think that's kind of the, there's a lot of stuff that kind of flows in between those. It's not necessarily cut and dried, but I think in speaking broad terms, that would be kind of the three classes that I would
absolutely.
Generally.
Yeah, and we're hunter, like we've always said, we're hunters and shooters, right? And so that hunter's just like a good crossover. Yeah. Can do both. Yeah. Just fine. Cause we obviously we probably shoot a lot more than we hunt. We're constantly practicing and shooting and testing and trying this and that. So yeah, no, I for a lot of years refused to shoot off a tripod. To be honest, shot my first big buck off a tripod. And it was more of a same thing. Like I just had to make it work type of deal. I hunted with a friend. We each had a tripod, and I had no way to kind of get the rear end of that gun stable, and so I grabbed his tripod and stuffed the one leg up underneath the back end, kind of like a trekking, like I would use a trekking pole nowadays, right? Right. And made a shot, great shot, 640 something yards.
How long ago was that?
Oh man, that was 10 years ago or more.
Really? Yeah. So confession.
Yeah.
Until about a month ago, I'd never killed an animal, like a big game animal off a tripod.
Really?
Like I've practiced off of one a lot. I'd shot NRL hunter matches. Like I've shot off of a tripod, but I'd never actually killed probably coyotes and stuff, but never actually killed a big game animal with a tripod. Killed an antelope a month ago using a tripod.
Cool.
And looking back, there were a lot of instances where it could have come in handy.
Oh yeah.
Right. There's always that scenario where, antelope hunting, I think of all the things, it seems funny, but I think is probably the most conducive to tripod hunting because you end up in such big, wide open, at least in Wyoming, flat ground where, laying prone, it seems like no matter what you do, there's just enough curvature to the ground where you can maybe see kneeling, but you can't see laying down.
Yeah,
right?
Grass, sagebrush. Yeah. There's one little sagebrush branch.
Exactly, right? So that was that exact scenario where, just had a little bit of curve where sitting down, I can't see them, they can't see me, but
perfect.
Kind of kneeling up high, I can see them. So,
Sweet.
Set up on a tripod,
perfect,
smelt them.
Perfect.
So
yeah, I've totally grown to love shooting off it. I mean, it is a different game, and maybe this goes into kind of part of the tips and tricks or a little bit that I've kind of learned over the years shooting off of them. I mean, that was a super early example of me shooting off a tripod. I had zero experience with it, I'll be honest. I think maybe I'd shot some rimfire or something like that type, cartridges off of a tripod, and so I had one set up that way. But over the years, as I've kind of shot and tested those things, the first time I really noticed that there was some, how your gun would react different off of a tripod was out at the range one day. I have this one gun that just hammers all the time, just in kind of one of my training guns, and I threw it on the tripod, just had barely gotten it set up with an Arca plate and everything, and I'd maybe tried it off of a hog saddle style, clamp or a vise, clamps around the stock. And I didn't really notice anything or notice any issues. As soon as I clipped it into that tripod head with that Arca plate, and I've noticed over the years, it's very caliber dependent, but this one in particular, which is just a 6.5 Creedmoor, nothing crazy. I started seeing it even at 100 yards, 5, 6, and up to 1,000. That gun shoots like 3/4 of a minute low off of a tripod.
Interesting.
Don't know why I don't know if it's that gun or how the setup is or what, because we'll do it in the class, in our training classes and up a sheep mountain, and guys are just tracking all the way out. And for whatever reason, that specific gun, and this is just being familiar with it, is just that gun, for whatever reason, shoots about a 3/4 minute low off a tripod. Interesting. And I can pop it off, go prone, and it's right back in the middle. So I just know that, 3/4 minute, is my addition on everything. And so if I'm shooting off that gun, I just know I have to add 3/4 minutes to
things that comes with
everything.
Practice.
Yeah. So you're going to find those things. And I've noticed even like on big calibers, I feel like it's opposite of what you would think it would be. I notice less zero change with heavier calibers.
Sure.
And I wonder if it's just the recoil. I don't know, them
setting or something like that.
There's enough recoil there that it, doesn't really affect that bigger round, but it's also a pretty heavy gun that I'm shooting in those calibers. So I know that affects it too. So anyhow, we've done, Brian's a good one. I wish we had Brian on this podcast. He's a wizard at shooting off a tripod, and he'll never say it, but I know he is. I'm too humble of a guy, but yeah, he's done a lot of testing with that and kind of noticed the same thing. As those bigger calibers, you won't see as much impact usually.
Right.
Shooting off a tripod, so obviously becoming familiar with your system and kind of testing and trying.
Sure.
Is there anything you noticed on that antelope hunt that was like, hey, I wish I would have done this different, or did this, maybe change the setup here that would have made it better?
I definitely recall, that was one where it was awkward because they had me pegged, right? They could see basically just the top of my head poking over the rise. And so I could see something over there. And so I didn't want to go to full standing, but I couldn't see them at like a sitting or a kneeling. So it was like this kind of awkward, like hovering in between things. And, you hear guys in the shooting world talk about free recoil.
Yeah.
Like that was about as free recoil a shot as I've ever taken. It was almost just like get it in position. And look, the guys listening, they can't see my body language here, but it was more like it just kind of get in the scope and tap the trigger kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Sometimes you just learn to improvise on the fly. And I'm sure someone being a fly on the wall would have looked at it and thought it was the weirdest, jankiest thing ever. But it killed the antelope, know, and sometimes just being able to roll with it and make things happen is what it takes.
Cool.
So, yeah. No, probably not the prettiest, but a dead antelope, and it was a good shot.
Perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
So, yeah. I can think of lots of instances where it would have been a game changer, right? Where I've spent lots of time hunting for a good shooting position.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have just set up and shot.
Yeah.
I think there are guys who overutilize it. Use a tripod as a crutch.
Yep.
I'm kind of in that camp that I think it can be a blessing and a curse. On this same subject, I've gotten away my entire life without hunting it off a tripod until this point.
Yep.
And I've still managed to kill a lot of stuff. Right. So sometimes that creativity, that, ingenuity and being able to get into some awkward positions prone, I'm still always prefer a prone shot where I can. And I think with a little bit of ingenuity, you can get prone in some pretty weird, awkward spots, or at least off of a bipod, I guess. Maybe not necessarily prone, improvised prone, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So, I mean, I guess while we're on the topic of shooting off a tripod, any other tips or kind of tricks you can think of? One thing that comes to mind is leg position, I think, is really big.
That's what I was just going to go into.
You've got three legs, and where do you orient them? And I found that, and this isn't just me, I've learned from other people, but, facing the two legs basically perpendicular to the way you're facing. And what that does is that allows that rifle to recoil straight back. If you think a triangle is going to, like a pyramid, is going to tip against the square, the flat sides of the tripod, right? So you want a flat side of that pyramid turning towards you as the rifle recoils. If you have a single leg back towards you, it's going to want to kick off to the left or the right. And realistically, it's probably not going to impact your accuracy heavily. It could. Yeah. But what it's really going to impact is your ability to spot your impact and get back on target, because if it kicks left or right, you're going to be looking who knows wherever after that recoil impulse is through. Right?
Yep. I've tried it's exactly from the majority of the shooting I'm going to do with that one leg forward, two legs back towards you. Believe it or not, I've done a lot of testing with the one leg back, and two legs forward. I've used it a little bit in like high angle shooting, where I'm shooting steep uphill.
I could see that,
where I've got essentially the two front legs out in front of me, and one leg coming back, but it's at a steep angle. The legs.
So you got the positions, right, to spread the leg out wider.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have the two legs kind of out front in their normal position, and then I have that one leg clear back. And what you can do is either once again, I use a trekking pole on a lot of stuff like that. But the other was I was able to put my rear bag on top of that rear leg.
Interesting.
as essentially
as a rear support. That's
on the
actually
leg.
pretty cool.
So I've tried that a bit. It's something I haven't spent a ton of time with because I'm really used to shooting the style that we've always taught and kind of done, where 2 legs back, 1 forward.
Right.
But that one was actually surprising how stable that was. But that's going to come down to big. It's like on the Hunter. Obviously, I'm going to try that on the backpacker tripod because the leg diameter on the Hunter is so much beefier.
Right.
Where if I'm putting that bag on there, there's not much squish to the leg bouncing, right?
Sure.
'Cause I'm essentially putting side load on that leg.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, that's one that I've tried there. But the age-old discussion, which I've got, I would debate it depending on who, to anybody, of what's the best is either, are you forward loading that tripod, or are you free recoiling, or are you doing some rear downward pressure?
Sure.
I've kind of found that rear downward pressure for some reason has been kind of a go-to for me.
Yeah.
In a flat shooting.
Okay.
Versus.
So what you're saying, and not to interrupt, but so essentially you're locking, you're finding your target, right? You've got some ability to adjust the tension on the head.
Yep.
You're locking in with your crosshairs below your target and leaning into the gun to allow the tension to build, right? So you're flexing that a little bit to where your crosshair hits your target, and then you're pulling the trigger. Yeah,
there's that, yes, like some settling on the tightening. I actually sometimes it's more of a, I may even start high on target.
Yeah,
it's more of I'm pulling down and up into my shoulder.
Oh, interesting.
Right,
the other way around.
Correct, because once that breaks, it's the recoil's going that direction either way, right? And so there's some forward, like I can feel, okay, that front leg's touching the ground. Obviously, it's not off the ground, so that's where that downward pressure. I try to put a lot of hand pressure on my left hand, forcing those legs down, to where I'm just keeping the muzzle down. So once I break that shot, it's more of the head's going to probably do a little bit of rolling with that shot. Yeah. And I just notice it stays flatter.
Interesting. So you're back on target.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the biggest thing of this. I wish I had a scope camera type deal to show like a trigger cam.
Sure.
Where I could see and kind of chew that. And so I'll go out and do some of these days of shooting and stuff, and I'm like, I just can't seem to get back on target, whatever. And that's like the goal, is to just find what works. And so I found that works the best for me. And obviously, like, if I sat and practiced the other of loading into the front leg, I'd probably figure out, oh, hey, I've got to put pressure here, and it puts it right back on target. But that's what I found for me.
It's something I've thought through, but I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever actually intentionally practiced it and tried those different techniques. I could see, just logically now thinking, I kind of like the idea of starting with your tension low and settling in as you're leaning into it.
Yep.
Pulling that crosshair into it. I'm going to have to go home and do some intentional practice there and see what works out. It's not the same, but it kind of reminds me of, guys in archery talk about kind of like letting your pin settle on your target, right? Yep. And I'm not a very experienced or talented archer, but it kind of reminds me of the same thing. And I think everybody kind of finds their own little technique that works. And I think the biggest thing is repeatability and having an intentional way your technique, rather than just kind of winging it.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. That would come down to, and that's another point, is the type of tripod head. If you want to cover tripod heads going forward. I'm, like we've talked about, spending a crazy amount of time behind glass, right? Running a pair of binoculars on top of a tripod. For anybody that hasn't tried it or, doesn't do very much, you're missing out.
Probably the biggest game changer I found in years, right? I mean, guys raved about running their 15s on a tripod for years, and I was always kind of resistant to it. But, I haven't gone to the 15s, but even now, finally converting to, 10s or 12s on a tripod, I'm telling you, like, it's hard to even explain, but your eyes, and I think it's more your brain processes a still image versus a shaky image.
100%.
Right? Yep. So you just see more stuff.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I legitimately think that I have missed animals or antlers or whatever it is for years and years and years because I think I'm looking at stuff, but my brain is not processing a shaky image as well as it is processing the little details of a still image, basically. Yeah.
I think it comes into I'm sure Ian or Brian's probably heard it. I think it was a military thing where they would teach people to, you know, instead of glassing left to right, like the same way you would read, is glassing right to left, right? And so, I've tried both, you know, and I'm sure there's going to be a moment where it catches it right, because it's like, if that image is so still as I'm panning with that, you know, those binoculars, you know, a deer flickers his ear or his tail or turns his head, you know, it's immediate. Your eye catches that, you know, maybe out of your peripheral or whatever. You're catching stuff left and right, and it's a huge deal. But yeah, I've tried it both directions, and I really do think that, you know, right to left deal.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Is something.
I wish we had them here to explain that logic, but I think it's kind of, you know, we naturally scan and read left to right. So I think you have this tendency to just move on past,
glaze over stuff,
actually see things. You're more conscious or something like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So anyways, tripod heads, I was bringing that up because of running a pair of binos or a spotting scope off of a ball head.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I can't do a ball head. Like, if I have a strictly shooting tripod, it's a different story. I would probably go with a ball head, but even still, like I don't even own a ball head right now. And I would use a pan head even to shoot off of, or, you know, or glassing 100%.
I'm the odd man out, and you spend a lot more time behind glass probably than I do even, but I think probably it was just the nature of the crappy tripods that I was running for years. I always had
I always had a ball head,
and I always made do with it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about that. Is you get good at what you practice with.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You know, I will say, like, over the last few years, having switched over some of my setups, now I'm kind of half and half on you know, fluid head or ball head, and it's really easy when you've got multiples to, you know, pretty much their standard thread across all of them. Totally. So, you know, you can put this head on that tripod and put a set of legs on that head. And, you know, I think a good head, if it's kept clean and if it's well maintained, can be pretty darn effective, especially where a lot of these do have a pan feature built.
A good ball head, you're saying? A good ball head clean? Yeah.
Can be really, really effective. But there is no doubt, like, if you're spending a lot of time behind glass, you know, a nice smooth fluid or pan head is definitely the better way to go.
Yeah. It's just ease of glassing and moving that spotter left and right. You know, you have to. And I will say, like, that ball head we have, like the I don't even remember the model number right now. But it fits really nice on the Hunter tripod. That's what we originally used to send it with, but it's nice that we have the option that you can select what head you would like for the legs now.
Exactly right.
But yeah, that ball head, or the it's
the BH1.
Yeah, BH1. So yeah, that ball head has a pan feature, right? So you can, you know, okay, hey, I've got my spotting scope on top. You've essentially got your, you know, 2 tension knobs, you know, set to where maybe you can move that, you know, scope up and down slightly.
Right.
But then I can kind of do that same panning, or if I got binos on there, I can just pan slowly left and right, like we were talking about. So I know you can be just as effective. I could make it work type of a deal, but for the hours and, you know, things like that.
You're really picking apart, you know, deer bedding areas or whatever else, you know, where you're really, really focused on gritting whatever else at the hillside. It's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like you mentioned, the big disadvantage to a fluid head is it's not quite as ideal to shoot off of. You know, all of these at least everything we're making, it seems like just about everything in the industry nowadays is going towards a universal ARCA mount, which is really awesome. You know, I think that was one of the best changes I made, is converting everything to ARCA.
Same.
You know, and so I'm not messing with all these little proprietary, you know, Manfrotto mounts or whatever else. Like, it's just anything fits on anything because it's all ARCA. I would highly recommend that. You know, and that goes for your rifle and your optics and all your tripods and everything else. But, you know, that ARCA mount on a fluid head, essentially, you don't have the left and right cant built into a fluid head, which is the the primary challenge for shooting off of.
Yep.
Now, if you're shooting flat, it probably doesn't matter, but where we're hunting, a lot of times it's not. And so that the left and right cant is a challenge.
Yeah.
And it can be, you can get that out of the system pretty easily by quickly adjusting some legs, right? And I think that's also kind of one of the things that I learned using a ball head for so long is I would just I'm not just adjusting the ball head. I'm also like adjusting legs and moving things around.
Yeah.
You're sitting on an awkward rock pile or something like that. And sometimes you find yourself with one leg halfway extended and one leg fully extended and one leg, spread out wider and propped up on something over here to get kind of a nice little position where, you're going to be sitting for a long time. But it's just a matter of kind of getting that ball or that thing level or plumb, I guess I would say, before for that left and right movement. We don't have it in the ball head.
For sure.
And then in theory, you could shoot off of a fluid head just as well as anything else.
Yeah. Like that's all I shoot off.
Improvisation.
Totally. It is a little bit more setup time for sure on legs, just leveling your level on your scope if you're shooting. So I would say that's the one downside.
Sure.
Just leveling that gun, if you need to shoot off of it.
Yeah.
Spotting scope or binos, if you're off a couple degrees, doesn't really matter. You can still glass just fine. So tripods are cool. I nerd out on them pretty hard for sure. Tried a lot of different ones.
I know that I've seen a few very custom. You've got a diehard when he's out in the machine shop on the mill, cutting this piece and tapping this thing, and
guilty.
We're guilty as charged. We like to tinker around with some fun stuff, right? And that's where some of the cool ideas come from. That's kind of the nature and cultural thing is some innovation and hey, I've got an idea. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice having that shop out there for sure for some things. Let's just change this a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Fix that a little bit.
Well, some of those features you may see in a future.
I'm hoping so.
Revic Gunwerks tripod.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah. No. What else you got? What else you would say for a tripod? They're a great piece of gear. Hard to pass up. Anybody that doesn't have one, you need one. I mean, I have guys ask me that question all the time. I'll go to a show or somebody calls me, hey, do you carry a tripod on all your hunts? I'm like, yeah, I absolutely do. And they're like, man, that's just heavy. And if you're not used to it, it may, 2 pounds or 3 pounds of weight may seem like something, but I've always got a spotting scope with me to either take video or see how big something is or whatever. And essentially let the glass do the walking for me, to pick up stuff at the long range. I mean, I'm guilty hardcore for running big glass on tripods and glass the stuff way farther away than I should be looking. I always, it's always oh, hey, I found a buck. Where is he at? Oh, he's across the valley on the other side. Why are you even looking over there? Well, I just want to see if they're there. So it's
got bored of looking at the close stuff. So I'm listening to the far stuff.
So it's they're a good piece of gear to have, and so anybody that doesn't have one, you need one.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is helping guys understand, the difference between the two and the pros and cons of the different styles.
Yeah.
Do I want the heavier, more stable, taller tripod? The hunter doesn't matter how tall you are, you're probably going to be able to use that tripod as a glassing spotting scope tripod, where the backpacker is really, really built as a sitting tripod.
Yep.
Right. I guess that's one major distinction that people really talk about is I'm short enough. If I extend the backpacker all the way up and the stem all the way up, I can use my angled spotting scope, but it's wobbly as scope.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Sure.
It's not ideal.
Yeah.
Whereas, the hunter, you're like I like to keep that thing extended with the spotter on, like antelope hunting, right? You drive to a point, throw it in the front seat, pop it out, step out, and you're glassing right there. No, that's not the one I'm after. Collapse it, throw it back in the front seat, drive another mile down the road.
Yep.
So, very different applications, very different set of kind of pros and cons and strengths to each one.
Yeah.
But kind of knowing what those are and then matching that either with your hunting style or if you have the access to both, then matching the intent and setting of your next outing, whether it's hunting or scouting or shooting or whatever else. Okay, this is the right setup for this situation.
Yep.
Goes a long way.
Yeah,
for sure.
We've talked about it before. was the what section of the tripod you extend first. So this would be a little tip, maybe a tip for guys that are listening. The smaller sections, if you extend those first, are obviously the thinnest. They're going to be a little weaker, right? Yeah. So always go heavy first, right? Yeah. I will say I do kind of this hybrid deal when I'm glassing, especially with like a pair of binos where I don't have a 10-pound or a 8-pound spotting scope on top, right? Where, if I've got a bunch of weight up there and it's a little windy, where you see that movement a lot. I kind of do a hybrid deal, mainly just it's for convenience and ease. Yeah. I'll extend maybe that very bottom section about 4 inches.
Okay. To get to like your nominal or like your baseline height, right? Yeah. And then you're fine tuning.
Yeah. There. So exactly. I'll do like the very bottom one, 4 or 5 inches, and then I'll do the next leg, on my small, like on the backpacker, right? I'll set that up where I've got that one for that very small section is just barely extended, so it's pretty stiff still, right? Yeah. And the next ones are open, but I keep those, the big ones is, the main adjustment, but then right in the middle where I can still reach them, I can still do this, quick, because I'll be glassing, this section of the first 90 degrees or whatever of the, canyon, and then I'll flip over and hit on the other side. And so just moving those legs over, I could still, small adjustment here, quick adjustment here, instead of, I got to reach all the way out there at the end and grab that last foot, right?
That's the key there, right? Yeah. And I think naturally, I'm probably the exact same scenario where, I prefer to use the bigger, stiffer legs where you can, but sometimes it's nice to, you end up with the middle or the lower section extended to where you can just fine tune that upper section just enough to reach a short and quick reach.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the backpacker, I'd really love the center column. I'm a center column guy for glassing off of a tripod. Shooting wise, not so much, right? There's a little bit of movement there that you can see, but it works. You can still make it work in a pinch.
Yeah.
That center column, if I can set that height, to where essentially I may be close to all the way extended, when I'm a pair of binos on there where it's lightweight and they don't notice the shimmy as much in the wind or movement. Right. But if I need to throw my angled spotter on, I could drop that center column down 4 or 5 inches, and now I can
not even have to
touch the legs. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just the center.
I think that's probably the biggest advantage I've found with the center column is the binocular glassing.
Yep.
Right. I think it kind of just gets that whole system a little bit away from your face, right? Because you're in a lot tighter to that whole thing.
Exactly.
With a bino on there, where it's just a little bit more ergonomic. Otherwise, I rarely use a center column. And I generally have not really liked them, but I do find that with the binos on there that's the way to go for sure.
Super nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to go look for some deer.
Well, heading out which tripod you're taking, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think we've covered it up. So yeah, guys, check them out on Revic Optics. The Gunwerks sells them as well. Check out either website. A lot of great tripods out there. We'll make a case for ours, but wouldn't blame you for picking up any of the other really cool stuff. There's a lot of really innovation happening out there, especially in the ultralight space. And guys building some really cool stuff.
Yep.
And I think you'll probably see some new stuff coming from us before too long. So head some out.
Okay.
Awesome. Until next time.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunwerks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunwerks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.